All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Marian Leary. I am the Director of Innovation here at the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing. I want to welcome you to our 6th annual Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator pitch event with lead support from the Bedford Falls Foundation. I'm really excited for you all to hear from our 4 finalist teams made up of Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine faculty and clinicians, as well as students, as they pitch their innovative ideas. Before I explain the run of events for this afternoon, I'd like to introduce Dean Tony, who will provide opening remarks. Dean Tony, could you please come to the stage?
Hi, Marian. Thanks. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. This is our 6th year of our pitch competition, and it continues to be an annual highlight for me. I am always inspired by the creativity of nurses, by their inventiveness, and the thoughtfulness of the healthcare solutions that they present. If we take a look at the challenges through a new lens and trying something different, that's how we solve problems, and we do that together. This event illustrates for me the spirit of ingenuity and community at Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine. These innovations do not develop in a vacuum. Nurses work alongside and with the people and populations they serve, spending more time with patients than any other healthcare providers to come up with options to improve care that are not only smart, but are also user-friendly. Congratulations to everyone presenting their ideas tonight. It takes a lot of courage to come on stage. I know how hard you've worked, and I'm excited to see your presentation. You're among friends. Before we get started, I have a few people to thank, starting with those who organized the Innovation Accelerator pitch event and program. From Penn Nursing, we have our Marian Leary, Dr. Terry Richmond, and George Damaris. And from the Penn Center for Innovation, Dr. Neetu Singh. This is also the first year that we've partnered with the Penn Medicine Academic Practice Partnership for the Accelerator, an idea that came as Jim and I were talking about how to best work on entry into practice nursing and how to, again, generate great ideas. Jim Bellinghoff is the Penn Medicine Systems CNO, and again, this event is sponsored by Bedford Falls. I'd like to acknowledge the group as well as the Innovation and Technology Subcommittee members, in addition to Marian Leary. Those are Katrina Pfeiffer, Hallie Ruppel, Rebecca Stam, Rebecca Clark, and Julie Thomas. The Innovation Accelerator is made possible through the generosity of several Penn Nursing funders, Carolyn E. and Thomas L. Bennett, Andy Laporte, and the Bedford Falls Foundation. We continue to add new opportunities to the Innovation Accelerator pitch because of our funders. And again, our Bedford Falls Foundation provided us with funds to inspire a new track, the Ready to Practice track. This track focuses on problems and solutions to assess new nurses in being ready to practice in today's healthcare settings. And I look forward, as do my colleagues at Penn Medicine, to see the innovative ideas proposed this evening. I want to thank especially Kate Fitzpatrick as well for sharing her thoughts as well as being our keynote speaker. And to our esteemed judges, Emily Gallo, Danita Henderson, Courtney Hutzma, Charlotte Renfield Miller, and Florenza Vanek. And finally, I want to recognize and thank our live sketch artist, Rachel Acker, and we'll be able to see her work. Her work brings these project pitches to life year after year. And for those of you who have not seen yet the new Penn Nursing magazine, you can see Rachel's sketches as well as a summary of our former winners. So it is programs like the Innovation Accelerator that represent nursing leadership. And as the Dean of Penn Nursing, I am proud that this initiative embodies the school's mission and values. Our mission of being the preeminent intellectual and transformative force for improving the health of individuals, families, and communities locally and globally. And it's on display today. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to hearing all the presentations. Good luck, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Dean Tony. All right, so the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator is going to provide funding to assist with the creation and testing of early stage solutions that improve health and healthcare. As Dean Tony mentioned, this year we partnered with our Penn Medicine colleagues as part of the Penn Academic Practice Partnership, and I want to thank them for all their support in putting this event together. This year, we have 4 teams who are innovating how to solve for ready-to-practice issues for new nurses, as well as better wound care options for patients. Each team will have 6 minutes to pitch their problem and solution to our illustrious panel of judges, and then I will moderate 4 minutes of questions. Our judges this year include Emily Gallo from the ADOS LGBTQ Plus Health Advisory Board, Danita Henderson from the Pennovation Works, Courtney Haltzma from Penn Health Tech, Charlotte Renfield Miller from the Beatrice Renfield Foundation, and Flory Bennett from Penn Medicine. I want to thank them all for being here today and providing important feedback to our finalists. While the teams are pitching today, again, visual artist Rachel Acker from Health Hero will once again be live sketching the presentations, which will be displayed at the end of the event. Once all the teams have pitched, the judges and I will leave this virtual event and confer. While that's taking place, Dr. Kate Fitzpatrick, the Connolly Foundation Chief Nurse Executive Officer at Jefferson Health, will provide the keynote talk. Following Dr. Fitzpatrick's talk, we will announce the winners. We have 2 tracks this year, the Ready to Practice track supported by the Bedford Falls Foundation, and our general track supported by Carolyn Thomas Bennett and Andrea Laporte. The Ready to Practice track focuses on problems and solutions to assist new nurses in being ready to practice in today's healthcare setting. The general track focuses on problems and solutions not addressed in one of the other Accelerator tracks, but specific to health and healthcare. This year, both of our general track finalists just happened to be focused on wound care for patients. The winner or winners of the Ready to Practice track will receive up to $20,000, and the general track winner or winners will receive up to $10,000. And this will go to help them to test and develop their innovation. And then new and exciting this year is our partnership with Penn Health Tech. The winners of the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator program will join the Penn Health Tech huddles to further develop their education and knowledge, as well as cultivate their networks. They will also receive mentorship from within Penn Nursing, the Greater Penn, and Philadelphia Innovation and Entrepreneurship community. I'd like to thank the Bedford Falls Foundation for their lead support of the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator program, as well as Carolyn and Thomas Bennett and Andrea Laporte for their continued support of this event. Before we hear from the pitches from our finalists, our 2 2024 Innovation Accelerator winners will provide an overview of the work that they've done over the past year. What they've accomplished in such a short period of time is beyond impressive. And so I'm really excited for you to hear the work that they've done. So I'm going to ask Dr. Carmen Alvarez to please join me on stage, and she's going to discuss the work that she's done for her project, Quindome. Sorry about that. Dr. Alvarez, if you could please come on to the stage. And you're on mute currently.
All right, here I am.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Marion. All right, let me share. Okay.
We can see your presenter slide if you just want to swap display.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right, this is not how, I'm sorry. I'm gonna do something quickly here. I think I shared the wrong screen. There we go. Are we ready to go? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, Great, thank you. What if we could equip people with the tools to take care of their mental health right from their own homes? That is the vision behind Cuidándome, which means taking care of myself. I'm Carmen Alvarez, family nurse practitioner, midwife, and developer of Cuidándome. So 21 million Americans struggle with depression, anxiety, and most never find the help that works for them. And this is especially true for very low-income Latinas, 1 in 3 of whom experience significant mental health challenges and also face a lack of Spanish-speaking providers, culturally relevant services, and skill-building tools to manage what are often chronic depression and anxiety symptoms. So to address this problem, we developed Cuidándome, a problem-solving self-management program specifically for Latinas experiencing depressive and anxiety symptoms. It's a 10-week synchronous remote program, making it accessible and convenient. And here's what makes Cuidándome unique. It's culturally tailored, as it was developed with and by Latinas. It equips women with the skills to manage depressive symptoms. The group sessions reduce stigma, build community, and provide a validating space for shared experiences. And this was the most favored feature of our program. As importantly, our program does not require delivery by licensed personnel, increasing its accessibility. And our data show a clinically significant reduction in depressive and anxiety symptoms after participating in Cuidándome. The pilot study was conducted remotely via Zoom, and we were mailing everybody their materials, so not a very sustainable model. So these images offer a visual of what we will be achieving with digitized Cuidándome. Our program will streamline facilitator workload with access to materials, ability to track progress, and send reminders all in one platform. Our program will automatically capture key components of the visit into the electronic medical records, freeing up facilitator time to focus on the participants and still capture details needed for billing. And for participants, our program will be more engaging through interactive content. So existing programs currently lack our combination of features for our target population. Digitized Cuidándome would be the only program that would offer culturally tailored support, group interaction, synchronous group interaction, and seamless EMR integration, simplifying documentation for reimbursement all in one platform. We are targeting federally qualified health centers. There are over 1,300 federally qualified health centers across the United States, which serve approximately 12 million Latinos, approximately half of which are Latina women. Our program is ideal for helping FQHCs to optimize their reach and services to Latino communities. And here in Philadelphia, there is a high demand for culturally competent mental health services in FQHCs. And we have partnered with some community health clinics to inform the development of our platform. So Cuidándome's success hinges on a passionate and experienced team. We have a multidisciplinary team that started now 7 years ago, including clinical psychologists, community expertise, and more recently, our technology innovation partners. So together we possess the perfect blend of clinical, community, and technological expertise to not only develop, but scale Cuidándome for maximum impact. So the Innovation Accelerator supported the product discovery phase of our project, where we mapped out every detail of the user experience. And this helped to refine the scope of what needs to be built for the program. So we mapped out the experience for the facilitator, what the facilitator should be able to do from the moment they log on to the platform to when they're actually hosting the group sessions. and also for the participant from when they log on from their device into the platform and interact with the different activities. And so here's an example of a sample wireframe where the facilitator is able to see detailed information about the participant, their attendance in the program, goals, next scheduled meetings, information that may seem pretty bland and not very exciting, but it matters a lot for billing and documentation purposes. And it can be a huge administrative burden for the person that needs to track this information, again, for documentation and billing purposes. And if they need to be going into different sections of the EMR in order to co-locate this information. And as I shared earlier, we want the content to remain interactive. So for example, this is some wireframes of an activity where participants are writing down what gets in their way of engaging in a behavior that we know would be helpful for managing depressive symptoms. And because the workbook activities build on each other, their response in this section will now pre-populate in a subsequent section. Whereas when we were doing this in a workbook, you're writing it out in one page, and then when the activity comes up again, you've got to flip over to the page where you wrote it down and write it all over again. And another example of an interactive content is with the goal setting. So not only will they be guided through setting SMART goals, but they'll be able to give it a rating and reflect on their experience of trying to reach their goal. So now that we've mapped out the product, this summer we will focus on user testing and finalizing the plan for the system design and the final build. So we will be gathering people who would serve in the facilitator role and people who would be participants, and conducting user testing from both perspectives and making adjustments accordingly. So in closing, unfortunately, the mental health crisis is continuing to grow. Cuidándome offers a culturally relevant and accessible solution, and it can't reach its full potential without going digital. And we have an opportunity to transform mental health care for an underserved and marginalized population with this product. So many thanks to the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator. It did accelerate my plan to digitize Cuidándome. This program provided me with a very strong foundation on which to keep building. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alvarez, and thank you for all the really hard, important work that you're doing with your innovative solution. So really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to call to the stage Dr. Kat Russell and Dr. Holly Harner with their project Camo Care. Great.
You guys able to see the slides? Beautiful.
Yes.
Awesome. So thank you so much for having us back. I'm Kat Russell, and I'm here to talk to you about Camo Care, which you can visit at www.camocare.org. I'd first like to acknowledge our incredible team, Holly, Sharon, Emma, and I also want to acknowledge that it really took a village to bring this website to life. But a lot of the folks who offered their time, their resources, their expertise at this point cannot be publicly acknowledged. So I just wanted to make it clear that we are the tiny tip of an iceberg of a lot of people who worked very hard to create this resource. And obviously, without the support of the School of Nursing and the Innovation Accelerator, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you so much for all of your support over the past year. The problem that we were trying to address was abortion and reproductive health care access for servicewomen in the United States. Following the Dobbs decision, approximately 100,000 active duty servicewomen found themselves assigned to states that had abortion bans or restrictions. This is kind of a heat map to show you where the largest military populations are. And for Texas alone, you can see that 1 in 12 military women are serving in that state, where if you're at Fort Cavazos, you are 8 to 10 hours away from the nearest abortion clinic. And one of the things that's been an issue in this field is civilians will ask, well, why can't they go on their own time and their own dime? And that just doesn't exist for servicewomen because their movement is restricted by Army regulations and policies. The other issue is that there's a systemic lack of policy knowledge that are meant to protect servicewomen. When we interviewed folks about what they thought their medical coverage was, 65% were not aware that TRICARE would cover abortion in cases of rape, incest, or if the mother's life was endangered. 77% thought that they needed their commander's permission to access abortion care. And 87% didn't know that they were entitled to convalescent leave to physically and emotionally recover from having an abortion. And part of the issue with this is that the Department of Defense hasn't taken any measures to train people on these policies. And when we did our assessment over a year ago, the websites that we found hosted by the DoD were very fragmented, sometimes had outdated information. And so we wanted to come up with a solution to correct that. The other issue that a lot of civilians aren't aware of is how difficult it is to access medical care when you're in the military. The first thing a soldier has to do is get permission from their leadership just to see the doctor or the provider. And then if they need an abortion, they have to go back to their leadership and get permission to travel. They have to come up with the money to travel, and they have to come up with the money for the abortion provider. And they have to find the abortion provider on their own. Any other medical condition is taken care of start to end by the military, not this. The other issue is that in our research, we found quite a few women were being denied permission to travel to access abortion care, which is against, military regulation, but they didn't know what their rights were and they didn't feel that they could do anything about it. Now, right after the Dobbs decision, the Department of Defense passed a policy that was meant to facilitate access to reproductive health care in these states with bans. But again, people didn't know about it. So our original goal was to build a website that was going to link servicewomen to these policies and make sure that they were aware of their rights. We were going to make it free. It was going to not be affiliated with the Department of Defense or the VA. It was going to maximize privacy and user safety by using best practices from domestic violence websites like quick escape buttons. And it was going to have a library of materials that walked people through these new policies and how they could get leave and what medical records they had to include and how they could try not to tell their chain of command that they were pregnant. And we originally were floating the idea of a community support site as well. So with that being our original intent, our original timeline was we were going to first hire a team, we were going to complete all the content, we were going to have sensitivity reading, beta testing, and we were going to create a lot of video and audio content so that we could help people of all learning styles. And all of this was going to be done by February, which, as I'm sure you've heard from every other Accelerator winner prior to us, it always takes a little bit longer than you planned. So we spent the summer really doing the Penn Innovation class. We got a wonderful web development team to work with us in September. In October, we started doing some pretty intensive stakeholder interviews. And what we found out is that people didn't necessarily want video and audio content. And the reason for that is, for folks in the Navy who are on a ship, they have very limited bandwidth. So they were much more interested in we just want text. So we altered our plan to focus more on text. And in November, we finished writing all of our content. And then in November, there was an election and a new administration came in. And on 29 January of 2025, all the policies that we wanted to address in our website were rescinded. So we went back and we rewrote the content. to focus more on access for the individual, not necessarily through the Department of Defense. And we beefed up the section on legal rights and legal resources. And based on our research, we knew that servicewomen wanted more emotional and mental health support resources. So we made sure that that section had a lot of content as well. Beta testing was completed last month. And as of this month, we have launched the site. So you are welcome to visit it at any time now. With our new objectives in mind, we are still free. We are still not affiliated with the DoD or the VA. It can be used on any platform, mobile device, laptop. We still maximize user safety and privacy. There's no cookies. We have digital privacy tips. There's some warnings and best practices about what you can do to maintain a safe digital footprint when you're trying to access that care. And our policy education, again, is now focused more on what TRICARE does and doesn't cover and what folks' rights are. There's also basic abortion education, abortion resources to find providers either in the United States or abroad, a lot of information about medication abortions through telehealth, abortion funds, and the post-abortion support that our stakeholders identified as a need. Because of the policy being rescinded, we've also added a section on research and advocacy from those politicians who are trying to codify new laws to protect service members trying to access critical reproductive health care. The lessons that we learned in the past year is, as always, teamwork makes the dream work. This was a huge effort. There were so many people involved who were so generous with their time and their resources and their subject matter expertise. No single one of us could have done this. The mentorship we received, both from folks here at Penn, from Marion, from our other mentors, from our web development team, from lawyers. If you don't know, find somebody who does. If you are the smartest person in the room, go to another room. Without the expertise of these folks, we would have been completely adrift. There will always be challenges. Some of these will be technical. Some of these will be trying to figure out a business process. Some of these will be massive policy changes. But if you have a good team and you have a good mentor or mentors, you're always going to be able to overcome those challenges. So just keep going. And then Semper Gumby is something we used to say in the service, always flexible. Again, when they got rid of those policies we were hoping to highlight, we just made sure that we pivoted to address the content that our stakeholders identified as needs. And you just keep on trucking along and doing good things. Our next steps, we're in the process of establishing ourselves as a nonprofit. We were very fortunate to be linked in with a law firm that has been helping us pro bono. We are going to continue refining our content based on user feedback. From our initial beta testing, we got feedback that, hey, we want resources for male service members. Hey, we want resources about sterilization. As more people find this site, we're sure to get more feedback, and we want to make sure again that this is a community engaged and oriented resource. So we'll keep adjusting to what they want. We also want to expand our content to include other women's health concerns, such as infertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. So again, we thank the Nursing Innovation Accelerator so much for all the support that you've given us in the past year, and we appreciate everything that you've empowered us to do. And feel free to visit us at camocare.org.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Holly. Again, similarly, the amazing work, important work that you're doing for service women, service members, and their families. Really appreciate it. Okay, so now we're going to begin the pitch event. So as a reminder, we have 4 teams. Each of them will have 6 minutes to pitch and 4 minutes of feedback from our judges. So I'm going to ask our judges to please come to the stage now. I'm also going to ask our first presenter, David Yu, to come on stage as well. And David will be pitching in the Ready to Practice track. So judges, if you want to go on video mute while David's pitching, and then when he's done pitching, we'll all come back on screen, but stay in the front of the event space. All right, David, if you want to bring up your slides, please. Great.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. You will have 6 minutes. I am going to time 6 minutes. I will come back on when 6 minutes is up, just so that you're aware.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. I'm David Yu. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Penn Nursing. I'm very excited to introduce our innovation, Inclusion Idea Inbox, a simple, scalable way to enhance psychological safety, reduce burnout, and elevate inclusion in hospitals. In our research on nurse burnout, many nurses, especially those from minority backgrounds, shared a sentiment like, my voice doesn't matter because I'm not part of the majority group at work, or we don't have safe space to share our workplace concerns. I fear retaliation. This isn't just one voice, it is a chorus. Burnout isn't just about overwork, it is about silence, isolation, and exclusion. Nearly half of US nurses report burnout, but it is even worse for minority nurses like nurses of color, LGBTQ plus nurses, and internationally educated nurses. Why? Because they face systemic workplace discrimination and unfair treatment, and often they don't feel psychologically safe to speak up. They fear backlash or that nothing will change. And with rising attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across the country, this is only getting worse. We need an organizational solution. Hospitals have tried to develop solutions, but many aren't working. They want and need effective answers. That's where the Inclusion Idea Inbox comes in. It is a nurse-led, web-based, unit-level anonymous communication system with robust data security designed to do two things. First, incorporate all unit staff voices into unit policies and decision-making. And second, suggest inclusive practices for diverse populations and accolade positive inclusive behaviors within the unit. AI generates themes from submitted messages on a monthly basis and brainstorms potential solutions. These are reviewed each month by a step nurse-driven inbox review committee, which consult nurse managers as needed. Review summaries are shared with the entire unit, along with a call for additional ideas for complex issues. This process fosters shared accountability, collective ownership, and meaningful change. It is simple, positive, and most importantly, it centers those who are often unheard. Currently, hospitals rely on annual employee surveys or incident reporting systems to address workplace issues. But these approaches are typically leader-driven, often focus on what went wrong with little follow-up. While the DAISY Award provides some positive recognition for nurses from patients or colleagues, it does not address the workplace concerns or ongoing feedback. In contrast, our inbox is step nurse driven, proactive, and focused on generating sustainable solutions. Although we will initially focus on UPHS hospitals, our customers are all US hospitals, of which there are more than 6,000 nationwide. However, the platform can easily scale to long-term care facilities, outpatient clinics, and beyond. We are requesting $20,000 to further develop and refine this prototype. This includes stakeholder interviews and compensation, IT support for AI-augmented platform development, research assistance, and travel and logistics. With this funding, we will co-design and create a pilot-ready inbox that works for nurses and by nurses. We have secured support from the chief nurse executive at UPHS. Our system is sustainable through seamless workflow integration, low maintenance, and nurse-led ownership, not just leadership-driven. It is a tool that grows with the team and adapts to the evolving needs. Our team has submitted one grant proposal for pilot testing and another for large-scale intervention trial. In the year following the Innovation Accelerator, we aim to complete a pilot at UPHS. In 5 years, we envision multi-site trials. And in 10, we see this being adapted across many industries like community health centers, even schools, anywhere diverse team work and psychological safety and inclusion matters. Our team brings together leading scholars and change makers from Penn Nursing and Wharton. We are experts in health equity, nurse burnout, organizational psychology, and inclusive innovation with diverse lived experiences across race, gender, sexual orientation, and professional disciplines. Together, we have done the research. Now we are building the solution. In summary, burnout is driven by silence and exclusion. The inclusion idea impacts give nurses, especially minority nurses or new to practice nurses, a voice to co-create inclusion. Why it matters? Because every nurse deserves to feel safe, heard, and valued. And when they do, patients thrive. We are ready to shift from silence to action, one inbox at a time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to ask our judges to join me on screen. All right. So you have 4 minutes of questions for David. Whoever would like to go first.
I can go first if that's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Your hand is up, Anita.
Oh, no, it's fine. I wasn't sure how we would jump in there, but you can go ahead.
Thanks. David, great presentation. Exciting idea. Tell me more about when you are generating these insights and giving people voices that they haven't had before. How do you feel the sustainability of the team that then does something with it, right? Really works to synthesize the insights, takes action on an ongoing basis. How do you describe the success of what that team looks like? And especially as you look to scale, how do you instill the same commitment to that action at a larger scale?
Yeah. So this platform is truly for nurse well-being and also organizational learning. It is really, we need ongoing organizational learning to improve the unit as well as nurse well-being. When it's implemented successfully, people feel safe to address their concerns or propose the ideas freely. And this will flow from entire the unit about innovative ideas, create more productivity or creativity, and also when nurse thrives and their patient care will also improve. So with this implementation, I expect the unit to have a more the healthy workforce as well as optimal patient outcomes and also ongoing organizational learning and improvement.
Thank you.
Anita?
Thanks. Oh, thanks, David. I had a question, great tool. I had a question about how the information is synthesized. So is the information kind of like crowdsourcing solutions across users and institutions, or is it institution specific? And does it in any way kind of ask any of the particular users about existing policies to kind of
Yeah.
understand before and after?
So with this funding, we want to interview many different stakeholders to create collaborative guidelines and instructions about how we are going to use this inbox. And based on the guideline, based on the instructions, anyone in the unit can submit the message. And depending on the volume, if the volume is huge, the AI will help to generate the synthesis of the submitted messages. And then it initiates the brainstorming about potential solutions. And then those generated themes and potential solutions will be reviewed by nurse-driven committee. And they're going to discuss the findings and then share the findings with the entire team. And they're going to call for more step-driven ideas for complex issues. So that's the general process of this inbox.
Charlotte?
Thank you, David. Great presentation. My question's on the users. Will it only be open to users who identify as part of a minority group, or will anyone be able to participate? And if so, how is it going to prevent kind of those majority voices from taking over again within this crowdsourced platform? Or will it be asking demographic questions and weighting certain answers more than others? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it is for all unit members from the unit. Anyone can submit the message. And literature support, and also I hypothesized feeling heard itself is really important for anyone, especially for minority people. So when I test this in the future, I anticipate it will work for all nurses, but potentially differential impact for minority nurses. Although the volume probably will be a little bit disproportional, but everyone's voice will be heard, and also they will be shared with the entire unit. So I think the quantity is important, but I think the fact that it will be heard, for that matter, I think minority nurses and the other workforce will feel psychologically safe and safe to speak up, and then their voice will be incorporated in the unit policies and decision making.
So we are at time. Courtney, if do you want to, do you want to ask your question? You can.
I'm happy to move on. I don't want to delay us.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
All right. I am going to ask our next team, Dina Bammer and Heather Gregg, to please join us. Judges, if you want to go on video mute. Great. And Dina and Heather are also pitching in the Ready to Practice track. Great. Whenever you're ready. You're on mute, Heather.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Apologies for that. Okay.
No
Thank
worries.
you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to present our innovation Enhance. So to start and set the context, we'd like to tell you about Nurse Claire, who struggled with her transition from nursing student to clinical nurse in a fast-paced hospital setting. Claire has dyslexia and ADHD. And while she thrived in nursing school with access to supportive accommodations and alternative learning strategies, now as a nurse in the practice setting, she is feeling overwhelmed with the format of orientation resources, documentation screens, and competing priorities. She's unsure how to ask for help, and she needs to meet competencies and time management requirements in her role. Neurodivergent is an umbrella term that encompasses several conditions that present unique challenges related to learning and functioning in a neurotypical world, like Claire is. Experts estimate that 15 to 20% of the population worldwide exhibit some form of neurodivergence. Here at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, we onboard roughly 700 nurses annually. So statistically, we recognize that we could be missing the opportunity to support upwards of 100 neurodivergent nurses like Claire in a more successful transition to practice every year. And that transition to nursing is challenging. The orientation process is detailed and rigid. The cognitive load is immense, and the sensory load is extreme. The environment is not friendly to neurodivergent individuals. Missed opportunities to support these nurses in their transition introduces safety issues, inefficiencies, decreased nursing confidence, performance challenges, and ultimately nursing turnover. And the cost of turnover for just one nurse is $88,000. Statistics estimate that 23.8% of new graduate nurses leave the profession before 1 year, with an estimated loss of $1 billion. Supporting these nurses would increase staff satisfaction and retention, promote patient safety, decrease burnout, and save organizations countless cost and time. Also, neurodivergent individuals possess a wealth of gifts and talents and are capable of immense creativity, loyalty, and productivity. Without the solution to support the challenges of neurodiversity, we will miss the strengths of this population. Currently, a singular resource to support various needs of neurodivergent nurses during transition to practice does not exist. Enter Enhance. Enhance is a toolkit of resources to provide support for neurodivergent individuals targeting 5 major challenging areas. The expandable toolkit provides access to curated resources in one centralized hub for an a la carte supportive experience because there is no one-size-fits-all method or approach to learning. The toolkit includes assistive technology, a library of accessible fonts to support visual processing, physical tools like earplugs to support sensory decompression, multisensory learning modalities such as text readers, and a social hub to support community and belonging. Enhance's toolkit will provide equitable learning opportunities to all nurses. It will be introduced during orientation and then promoted during ongoing training, competency, and performance evaluation. Notably, healthcare organizations are not represented among neurodiverse supporting employers listed here on the right side of your screen. This presents a huge growth market for attracting healthcare talent within Philadelphia alone. In today's job market, healthcare organizations are struggling to attract and retain new nurses, and our toolkit bridges the success found in the commercial sector, advocacy groups, and academic organizations with the added benefit of a targeted healthcare application. Enhance gives healthcare settings like HUP a competitive edge to recruiting and retaining nursing candidates. Excuse me.
We're going to move into budget and sustainability. So funding requires the expertise of several sources, and this includes focus groups, software platforms, and assistive technology. Our prototype costs will include multimodal resources, platform generation, technology testing, and advertising. At HUP, nursing sponsorship will align with information services and human resources to determine both short-term and long-term investments. Enhance will have expandable capacity with partnership of our learners. We will phase implementation over the course of a year with ongoing feedback for optimizations. Annual funding to maintain Enhance is minimal and absorbed by the organization in the nursing budget. This includes platform maintenance and yearly subscription renewals. Additional grants would be explored to maintain. Now we think about the future of Enhance. Within 2 years, we look to expand throughout Penn Medicine. Within 5 years, we like to branch to academic practice partnerships and professional organizations such as Visiet Nurse Residency, which supports 700 healthcare organizations annually. By licensing Enhance, we will market external healthcare teams who face similar challenges and comprise the largest employment sector in the US. Future iterations focus on accessibility with expanded content per our user feedback and website analytics. It can be customized to competency and leadership development. It will support interprofessional learning and expand potentially to other healthcare roles. So who we are as a team? We are comprised of nurse leaders in multiple settings, both academic and frontline acute care delivery settings. We are passionate about supporting nursing in the transition to practice. We are well positioned to achieve this work from our professional networks and current roles, which promote evidence-based care and professional development. We are skilled at program development, and we're going to advocate to make sure we embed solutions into daily practice. We are supported from our organization to invest in Enhance to help Claire and many others like her. So in closing, our practice readiness and nursing retention are costly challenges in healthcare environment today. Enhance is essential to promote nurse well-being, satisfaction, performance, and retention. Patients, nurses, and healthcare organizations alike will benefit from inclusive innovations like Enhance. Claire's successful transition to practice with the support of Enhance is our greatest success story. Claire is now providing confident, excellent patient care and now also mentors other neurodivergent nurses throughout the social hub feature of Enhance. We thank you today for this opportunity to present our innovation and potentially empower a more inclusive, diverse nursing workforce. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both so much. All right, judges, if you want to use the raise hand, we can start taking questions. Courtney.
Thanks. I think my first question is really wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on have you engaged with neurodivergent nurses directly in the design and feedback process, and how has that helped shape your platform?
Sure, I'd like to share that experience with one nurse in particular who approached us for support shaped the formation of this project, particularly the resources to support visual processing. And part of the use of the grant money would be to then hold focus groups to design and implement and explore that gap so that we can design the toolkit to meet the needs as they are here at Hub.
Great. Flory?
Great topic. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering if you have worked with any of the supports for residency, like the Vizient program, and gotten any information from them on this particular topic and any resources that they had available.
Really great question, Flory. And I think as we continue our efforts, we've done a lot of literature-based searching and just kind of scratching the surface of all that it could be. I think we've started to tailor mostly into some local organizations to see what's available first that could be granular assimilated, and looking really into the healthcare application. Vizient and others institutions like that will be really helpful to structure the support. We realize there's an abundance of resources out there. Academia is doing it really well. There's different sectors that are doing it really well. And what we're looking to do is really tailor using partnerships such as that to help build case studies, evidence-based areas, toolkits, checklists, things like that that are going to help prompt thinking creatively, thinking differently. And in a neurotypical world, that makes sense with some of the orientation materials that we've developed, but we realized it's not one size fits all. So I think from there, we've started to scratch the surface, but we're really excited to dive in with focus groups and an expansion into software platforms and professional organizations to make sure that we're investing that time and really having that curated feedback into the toolkit that we develop.
Well, thank you so much for your answer. I think a ton of opportunity here to also loop this back to higher education as well. So definitely not something that I have seen considered broadly at that level. So thank you for bringing light to this.
Okay. Emily?
Great, thank you. Really good presentation, certainly a need. I'm bringing the lens from a corporate perspective, and I was just curious, knowing that you've done the work to compare to what solutions might be out there in other organizations in Philly, Comcast, the others, and knowing that medical organizations do like to partner with healthcare providers and put their name on something that would be very meaningful. Have you thought about when this gets off the ground and gets scaled, ways to look at sponsorships or to fund the ongoing needs of the program?
I'm happy to take that. Yes, we would love to be able to explore that fully. We are seeing that there is even capacity within our own institutions. We have something such as Cobalt, a resource that is for benefits and such that are already starting to do some of that work. And I think that would be a really great opportunity to learn from each other in healthcare. It's all about interprofessional learning, taking from the best and looking to expand upon that, incorporating research. So that is something that we're looking to explore. Again, I think from there, we're looking at some of the markets to see who's doing that really well, what concepts they're instituting, with the opportunity to see if we can bridge those solutions. But we wanted to first start with some focus groups to make sure that we're thinking about the specific interventions that would be really supportive to nursing, but we realize that may be a limited approach, and we really want to expand that to all individuals within the healthcare organization and then potentially beyond. It's a really great suggestion, and I think that's something that we really look forward to exploring.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any final questions? All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just
Yep,
wondering
go ahead.
if there's anything. I know we're talking about the transition from academia to actual practice. Is there something on the academic side that is working that allows folks to cope better, or is it just a difference in environment and requirements of practicing?
I'll be happy to take that, Danita. A lot of times students come into academia having had support in high school, being taught how to advocate for themselves, and they're welcome to ask for help. But in the professional world, that permission is not there, and there's not the psychological safety to be able to ask for help. And in academia, the students are told that there is all the support available. And in the professional world, we don't make that so readily available. So one of the things that we want to do is to create that psychological safety and work with our nursing leadership to provide education about ways to communicate the psychological safety and welcome people to ask for help. So outside of transition to practice, this can also help nurses who are already practicing to then be able to share how they have achieved success with their neurodivergent challenges in nursing.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Heather and Dina. Appreciate it. All right, so we're going to bring up our first pitch presenter in our general track. So this is a team of Gabby Skyvan Ganassim and Jordan Long. And Gabby, Jordan is in the room with you, correct?
She is.
Okay, just want to make sure folks know she's there. We can see your display. There you go. Thank you so much. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabby Skyvan, and today I am presenting an innovative product, the Larvae Infestation Flex Treatment, aka LIFT. So imagine yourself living with a chronic wound. You're faced with difficulty healing and not having enough supplies. This is reality of roughly 6.5 million people in the United States. And then unexpectedly, you see something moving inside your wound. You're scared, you don't know where to turn. You seek help and you're told you have myiasis, a maggot-infested wound. Many emotions can emerge, including fear, embarrassment, and feeling of being judged. As clinical nurses, we have been seeing an increased amount of maggot-infested wounds in the emergency departments around Philadelphia. However, as a non-reportable disease, we are unable to capture the full magnitude of the patients afflicted. From a monthly manual counts in one local emergency department, we have roughly over 1,000 cases month citywide. Traditional methods of removing the maggots out of the wound can involve several applications of petrolatum and plastic wrap in the hopes of make the maggots surface, followed by manual one-by-one removal, causing increased anxiety and discomfort for the patient. The unintended consequences of myiasis infestation include invasive, time-consuming, and painful manual removal, resulting in potential overtime, increased medication demands, and hospital length of stay. LIFT is the solution. LIFT is an adhesive, occlusive dressing that targets deep myiasis. LIFT's natural components draw maggots to the surface while simultaneously suffocating them. This innovative dressing supports a faster and gentler approach than traditional methods while reducing financial burden to patients and organizations. By redefining the standard of care in myiasis treatment, LIFT will improve stigma biases and fundamentally advance practice patient outcomes. Presently, our low-fidelity prototype cannot be displayed due to a patent prospects and risk of knowledge appropriation. Our groundbreaking product eliminates 99% of manual labor, significantly reducing the need for hospitalization and surgical procedures, setting us apart from the competitors. LIFT is 94% faster at deep myiasis removal, aiding a quicker recovery, restoring patients' dignity, and delivering a far less traumatic experience. We all know that wound care accounts for an astonishing $145 billion in annual healthcare spendings nationwide. Myiasis remains a non-reportable condition, making true prevalence difficult to capture. Our organization sees roughly 5 to 10 emergency room cases per month, not including those who leave AMA. And the ongoing xylazine crisis is further expanding this at-risk population. We estimated a total addressable market of 29 million based on hospital admissions alone, a figure that could grow significantly when including nursing homes and wound care centers. So our ask is for $9,550. And after aligning with the biomedical engineer, this grant goes towards creating a prototype and patent acquirement. Pending IRB approval, we will seek partnership with the Lidner Lab for proof of concept and prototype testing, starting with a sample size of 20 dressings. Our goal is to conduct data analysis based on initial testing, refine our prototype, and conduct a trial on a local hospital, expanding our sample size to 40 dressings. Here is a itemized budget chart, but again, we're unable to share additional detailed items due to patent prospects. Our stakeholders are engaged in the idea of reducing organizational costs as it creates improved patient care and outcomes. We have a strong partnership with the educational department as well. With clinical staff involvement, our goal is to establish LIFT as a protocolized standard of care, ensuring patient integrity and maintaining ongoing support after implementation. In terms of future iterations, we foresee our product reaching commercial popularity on a global scale. Our heartfelt objective is to see like our product used in all customers' locations with expansion into pharmacies for over-the-counter use, as well as veterinary clinics and farms, as humans are not the only afflicted recipients of myiasis. Our team is comprised of myself as the visionary clinician, Jordan, our DNP liaison at UPenn, and Taylor, our wound care subject matter expert. We are in need of biomedical engineer at the present time. In conclusion, myiasis imposes both physical and emotional burden on affected individuals. Without an effective and efficient intervention, organizational resources are depleted. The heavy financial burden wound care places on CMS and healthcare organizations makes our solution crucial. LIFT provides a dignified, high-quality care to individuals suffering from this stigmatized condition while alleviating pressure on healthcare systems. LIFT offers resolution to both problems along with the capability of expanding globally. It has the potential to establish a new benchmark in patient-centered care.
Great, thank you. So judges, please join me. Gabby, do you want to stop sharing your screen?
I thought I stopped sharing, sorry.
That's okay, but we can still see it. All right, not a problem right now. So Courtney, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for this presentation, Gabby. Well done. I think my one question I have looking at your pathway moving forward is, will this treatment need a regulatory approval? And do you have a sense of what type of pathway that would be?
Yes, we anticipated the need of a bunch of things, including FDA clearance. So any natural substances that has like a byproduct results or anything involved will be considered as a medication in some capacity and will need that. So it's one of the challenges that we oversee in this process.
Okay, and this would be incorporated into a dressing. So do you think that this would likely be a combination product or more along a drug?
Not along a drug. I think it mostly a combination product of it. We cannot speak much into it because of the
of
patent,
course.
but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Charlotte?
Thank you, Gabby. That was really fascinating. I know you noted that you see this as an increasing problem, and you also noted kind of targeting a prone population as a non-health expert on this judging panel. Could you talk a little bit more about who this prone population is and if you know why it's increasing and if that's helped you kind of figure out your solution to this problem?
Sure. As clinicians, we see like I am a clinical nurse educator here at Presby. So we see like wounds the entire time. Besides like the population that already has wounds from like chronic conditions like the diabetic population, we have been seeing an increased amount of wounds that are related to the drug opioid crisis that we have right now. And this has been, I believe, increasing altogether along with the housing stability. And this was prompt to us to just kind of dig more into the subject. I feel, and I can tell more about like my background as this was always kind of my passion into wounds. And as an RN, we were already back in Brazil where I used to live in a farm. We were already like addressing some of these concerns and the kind of not dressing, but into the animals in the farm. So that's it, it's kind of like how it pulled. But here, as your question for the population, I feel that the housing stability and as people are not getting enough supplies as wounds at home, they are really at risk. It's not only like the people that don't have like the housing problems, but like all the patients that live at home that don't have enough wound supplies to go through their month. So they are also at risk population for those things to happen.
Great. Emily? You're on mute.
I'm on mute. I was saying great presentation, and I hope this product comes to bear. It seems like it is very needed. Along those lines, knowing that you're in the earlier stages, and certainly we'll have to think about the product itself, regulatory, all of that. You could see a pathway with this where you partner with or acquired by an organization, right? A corporate organization. Talk to us a little bit about how would you be starting to think about that, even at this stage, that could support your journey to get the data, the trials, the launch plan that you have in mind.
Hi, this is Jordan. So our goal is to really align with the lab first and make sure that we're following through with the correct steps with our prototype and moving that forward. And then aligning with a corporation hopefully we would stay with the university itself and see where those resources could take us on a more corporate scale, because we have true loyalty to the university and its educational components that service us and our populations. So we haven't given complete thorough thought to your question, because that is really outside of our scope as clinicians. So we would definitely tap into those resources that become available to us over time.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? All right. Thank you both for the presentation. I'm going to call up our last team to pitch in the pitch event and in the general track, Shoshana Aronowitz and Eleanor Torrey.
Can you see this okay?
I can, yes. And Danita, you're still on screen, just FYI.
Right.
Whenever you're...
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're excited to share our pitch of the innovation of tele-wound care consultations to you today. I work as a nurse providing wound care for people who use drugs in Kensington, Philadelphia, a hotspot of the opioid epidemic in the United States. This picture is of a patient well known to our team that unfortunately passed away. Her story got national attention through this New York Times article. We've had many other patients die or lose limbs due to untreated wounds. Despite media attention around the wound care crisis among people who use drugs, one simple solution is overlooked: the untapped specialized knowledge of certified wound care nurses. Our innovation brings this knowledge to highly accessible community settings where the need is greatest through remote tele-wound care consultations. There are 5.3 million people in the United States diagnosed with opioid use disorder. And if you use drugs, you will most likely be exposed to xylazine, especially in Philadelphia, where 99% of the fentanyl has xylazine in it. Xylazine is an adulterant in the drug supply known to cause severe wounds, leading to amputations, hospitalizations, and death. However, half of people who use drugs avoid hospital care due to fear of stigma, discrimination, and withdrawal. We need solutions to increase access to specialized wound care in community settings. Our solution is not a product or device, but an innovation in the way we deliver care. We're proposing to test and scale tele-wound care consultations to bring specialty wound care to the community. Specifically, our solution will begin with a community provider who will identify patient need for specialized wound care. They will then initiate a teleconsult with a remote wound care nurse. Then the community provider will deliver patient-centered wound care together with the wound care nurse, who will advise on the need for antibiotics, x-rays, or hospitalization. Here's an example of the conferencing platform we will use. We will be repurposing existing conferencing platforms such as Google for our innovation. We're going to test our solution at Courage Medicine, our community partner in Philadelphia. Courage already uses telehealth for other patient care needs. will repurpose their existing Google platform for tele-wound care consultations. After initially trialing this at Courage, we will expand to 2 other community organizations to learn about street-based care. There's not a direct competitor specializing in community-based wound care for people who use drugs. Our most direct competitor is the status quo of getting care either in the community, where there's a lack of specialized wound care, or the hospital, where there's a lack of trust, accessibility, or cost-effective care. There are some companies that offer similar services but do not have the trust, accessibility, or cost-effectiveness of our solution. Enterprise platforms are geared to hospitals and are extremely resource-intensive. Remote wound care companies offer virtual consultations with wound care nurses, but are tailored for other patient populations. High-tech imaging services include AI analytics of wounds, but again, are resource and fiscally intensive. Our solution meets all the needs of our population.
It's difficult to know exactly how often the service would be used until we trial it, which is our proposal. We have connections with about 200 wound care nurses who have participated in our pilot study and consented to follow up for future projects, half of whom said they would volunteer at a harm reduction organization. We have connections with about 15 different community-based organizations in Philadelphia. This is our detailed budget that covers wound care consults, supplies, telehealth equipment, and a research assistant to evaluate outcomes. In total, we're asking for $10,000 to pilot, test, and develop our innovation over 8 weeks, which will include the cost of 80 wound care consults and wound care supplies. Our rate for wound care consultations is competitive in the field. If we move past the pilot, we are estimating that continuing to run, test, and scale the innovation for an additional year would cost an additional $65,000. We will pay for the expanded model through Medicaid billing for wound care services or additional grant funding. Most community organizations do not yet bill Medicaid for wound care, which is why we need this pilot funding to give us time to test and learn about how to best deliver this model using Medicaid dollars. We will develop a toolkit that outlines steps community organizations should take if they want to utilize tele-wound care consultations. This will include tips on billing for wound care services and supplies, guidelines for partnering with institutions for specialized wound care nurses, and grant writing resources. We will refine this toolkit throughout the project period. In the future, we will expand our innovation outside of Philadelphia by disseminating our toolkit. As we expand to other areas of the U.S. with different policies and patient needs, we anticipate revisiting our toolkit. We can adapt this model to settings outside of the community, such as substance use inpatient care settings or jails and prisons. Both of these settings care for people who use drugs but lack specialized wound care services. Our model could be adapted to fit in these settings to increase access and quality of care. Our team is interdisciplinary and experienced in telehealth, wound care, and community health. I am an expert in the provision of telehealth for people who use drugs. Dr. Eleanor Turi is a wound care expert who has pilot data connecting us with specialized wound care nurses and community partners with wound care needs. And Dr. Tricia Acri is the executive director of Courage Medicine, where we are piloting our project. She will facilitate access to the patient population for our initial trial.
Everyone deserves access to high-quality healthcare. No one deserves to lose a limb or their life when the solution is a phone call away. Thank you for your time.
All right, great. Judges? Charlotte?
Thank you. A great presentation. My question is kind of on ongoing care. So I understand that the community partners will be providing the technology for this initial telehealth consultation, but is there any concern about follow-up or check-ins following that initial consultation and how they'll access that telehealth care on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think follow-up is definitely a general concern with this patient population, but the future of our innovation is that these settings are the most accessible that they really can be to this patient population. So if they are going to follow up with care anywhere, it's going to be in these community harm reduction organizations. And we're hoping to have, as we scale this innovation, the service available whenever the clinics are open, which Courage Medicine is open every day from 10 to 3. So patients can just walk in, and that's when we're hoping to have the wound care services available. So I hope that answers your question.
Anita?
Okay, I had a question about two things, I guess HIPAA and the Medicaid billing. Right now you said that many of the community resource organizations don't bill the Medicaid, so how would you see to transition, help in transitioning them to that? Or do you know what the reason is why they don't currently do that for their other services? And then how does your tool or toolkit or your service model kind of trigger any kind of HIPAA compliance components on your end?
So for the HIPAA compliance, the Google platform that Courage uses, and that will most likely replicate in other sites as we scale, is HIPAA compliant. So that is hopefully what we'll continue to use moving forward. For the Medicaid billing, so Courage does use Medicaid for its other patient concerns right now, specifically like opioid use disorder medication care. So at Courage, adding on wound care service codes will be relatively simple to bill for. It's the other kinds of organizations that we're scaling to that I think it's going to be more complex, like street-based settings where they have not billed Medicaid before. And that's where I think we might have to rely more on grant funding or working with the organizations a lot more closely to make sure the wound care nurse has an NPI that they can bill independently, which is possible through Medicaid, but it's just going to be more on like a case-to-case basis with those organizations.
And just to further clarify, many of these organizations outside of the street-based ones do bill Medicaid for many other things. What I think a lot of organizations are not yet doing is billing specifically for the wound care services or the wound care supplies. And that's where I think we could be supporting organizations and getting those things covered.
Lori?
My question is kind of a follow-up to the first question. Any consideration for when you identify that somebody is going to need further acute care or admission to the hospital and getting the individual to where they need to go? So what does the relationship look like with the admitting facilities, one, and two, thoughts about encouraging people to get the care that they need who may be apprehensive to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question and happens every day in our clinic for other reasons. At Courage, we have a pretty streamlined process as much as it can be with, we have connections with certified recovery specialists at a few of the different hospitals throughout Philadelphia that we call ahead of time, along with addiction medicine teams to let them know that this patient is coming in. We'll buy them the lift to get them to the hospital. So just leaning on a lot of those harm reduction practices and not forcing someone to go to the hospital, because at the end of the day, it's their choice. But really, I think that's the pro of partnering with these community organizations is they have a lot of practice and experience in getting these people transitioned into the hospital in the safest and most caring way possible.
Emily, we're at time, so one final question.
I'll make it quick, but the technology and the platform that you're looking to use for a very specific reason and a very worthwhile reason, do you think there's opportunity more broadly with wound care specialists and expertise not being tapped enough, or there aren't enough of them out there, even within a hospital or a well-established health organization, that this telemedicine technology could also address?
Yes, yeah, of course. I'm working on another paper and I was doing a lit review and it found that only like 33% of hospitals have a specialized wound care nurse. So there's definitely a huge need just in general for specialized wound care knowledge, not only in our group, and that's a way we can scale further, is looking at other populations for sure.
I'll also just add really quickly that a lot of folks don't know this, but most like inpatient substance use treatment centers don't have the capacity to provide this type of care. And actually wounds are a reason that many, many people are turned away from inpatient substance use disorder treatment, even if they like qualify and want to go. So this is an issue like across substance use treatment settings, not just like these low barrier kind of street-based programs.
All right, great. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to thank our finalists for their amazing, innovative ideas and pitches. If you all could have seen the amount of work they put in just the last couple of weeks, you would be even more blown away. So, the work really shone through, and I appreciate how much time and energy they put into this. To our judges, if you can please now exit this Zoom event and head over to the Zoom breakout room that I sent you both this morning, and then I just put it in your direct chats. If you need that, please let me know. Otherwise, I will meet you over in that breakout room in just 1 minute. So before I go, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dr. George Demiris, our Associate Dean of Research and Innovation at Penn Nursing. He will introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. Kate Fitzpatrick. George, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Marion, and it's a great honor and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Kate Fitzpatrick, who is the Connolly Foundation Chief Nurse Executive Officer at Jefferson Health. Dr. Fitzpatrick served as Chief Nursing Officer and Associate Dean for Practice Academic Integration at the University of Vermont Medical Center and provided leadership to the population health strategy to support launch of the CMS all-payer waiver program within the state of Vermont. And then in October 2019, she assumed the System Senior VP of Nursing Practice and Clinical Development role for Jefferson Health. And in January 2021, she was elected as the System Chief Nurse Executive Officer for Jefferson Health. And she holds a joint appointment as Professor and Associate Dean for the Jefferson College of Nursing. With that, we're really looking forward to her keynote presentation. So Kate, I'll hand it over to you. There you are.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
And you can hear me okay, George?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, George, for that kind introduction. And let me just start by saying how incredibly honored I am to be asked to be the keynote for this amazing event. I want to thank the Penn School of Nursing, and in particular, Dean Villaruel and Marion Leary, both who have been inspirations to me and I consider great colleagues in nursing. So, and wow, what incredible pitches. I'm absolutely blown away with the work that we've just witnessed. And I'm so excited to see where that work goes because it's going to benefit all of us. Okay, so I also just want to take a moment and acknowledge the generous sponsorship of Bedford Falls. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the Conway family has generously been supporting nursing education and the nursing workforce for many years. And they've had a particular interest in really helping educate nurses in this country and have had a particular focus that's very personal to me in connecting potential students from military affiliated backgrounds with nursing programs. So I just am so grateful to Bedford Falls for their support and for sponsoring today's event. So very simply, what my hope is today is to just have all of us think a little differently about how we channel our inner innovators. And I think just witnessing the presentations we just heard, the new pitches, but also the amazing two groups who presented, who were part of last year's Pitchathon, I think there are some themes that we can draw upon about what I at least observed in some of what I heard. And so I want to draw upon that and really have everybody just go a little deeper and have some reflection on how we will each build upon and channel our inner innovators. One of the things I will say, spoiler alert, is really the key takeaways for me are really four big things when I think about innovation and I think about nurses and innovation. And it really is a secret sauce of four ingredients as I see it. It's curiosity, it's courage, it's creativity, and it's collaboration. And I think also having the right context to have all those ingredients come together to lead to some of the work like we just witnessed. So I hope it's a fun and inspiring session for everyone. So I wanted to just start with introducing you to a physician named Dixon Chabanda. And he is a psychiatrist who has practiced in Zimbabwe for many years. And he had a really unfortunate and tragic event that happened to him in his practice in Zimbabwe. He had been caring for a young man who it was clear, in addition to some medical needs, was really suffering from some mental health challenges. And he was probably in the village he lived in several hours to the closest remote clinic, and definitely had very scarce ability to access mental health or behavioral health expertise. And in the course of working with this patient, unfortunately, he died by suicide. And this really shook Dr. Dixon Chabanda to his core and made him really think about, we've got to do something, and we've got to think creatively about how we can bring different resources to these people in outlying villages who desperately need mental health support. So his idea was a really simple one, and it was to leverage some of the elder women in these villages who are well respected, who are trusted advisors, who many of whom are grandmothers, have raised families, have had a lot of experiential context in dealing with all kinds of dilemmas in human beings. And the idea was born to develop these grandmothers as mental health first responders, essentially, and to do so by placing them into communities on what they initially called mental health benches. So it was this really sort of novel idea with some enthusiastic communities who really wanted to embrace this. And as you can see in the picture on the far right, some of the early grandmothers who were part of this. But what happened was it was a remarkable sort of evolution of bringing resources to communities and having this first responder approach really help get people the immediate help and listening and essentially talk therapy they needed desperately. But one of the early challenges they found was that when they first termed this as the mental health bench, they didn't have a lot of takers because there was a stigma associated with that. So they evolved this and really talked to the grandmothers about it, and they've reframed it to be the friendship bench. And this has been, there's some great stories out on social media about it, and several weeks ago it was featured on CBS Sunday Morning. But it's just a wonderful, very simple, but very powerful representation of how one person and their experience and an idea and thinking differently and broadly led to something that's now a global phenomena, where there are variations of this friendship benches in many communities outside of Zimbabwe. And so it got me thinking about, what are the things that drive innovation? And so I think starting at the inception point is probably a good place to start. But what are the moments, or what are the events, like the trigger that really got Dixon to think differently about mental health access in his country? There are these triggering moments that really, when we optimize them and we leverage them, can lead to really incredible things. So I'm going to invite you, and I can't see the chat, but just in the spirit of interaction, I'd love for those who feel inspired just to share some of your thoughts about what are the things that you've noticed that really spur or spark these moments of innovation. And we're going to talk about a couple of them. And some of you are going to laugh looking at this slide, and some of you may be quite perplexed and not recognize anything on the screen. But I share this because these are all items that have been embedded over time in daily human life. They're products that were household staples or community staples that, depending on how old you are, many of you would recognize these things and know that they were just part of the fabric of American and global life. But at some point, all of these things evolved and they became obsolete, many of them. And so thinking about why was that? What was the impetus to have these things go on and to iterate into newer, better things? And what really were the drivers that led to that? And I just have to mention the bottom left-hand picture is, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a standalone dishwasher. We actually had one of those in my house growing up. And you see you had to drag it over and plug it into the sink, which meant the sink was unavailable for hours. It was a big drain on the water bill, and you couldn't access the hot water for a period of time. But, this has really been something that's been innovated and evolved incredibly. So I think looking at where we've been and thinking about, at some point in time, these were remarkable ideas that people had. And part of this idea and notion of innovation is that it's a journey and it's a continuously iterative and kind of expansive and progressive process. So let's talk about, some of what's behind that. And I think there's a number of things that came to mind for me when I sort of reflected on what is it that makes us innovate and makes us think about improvement science and think about how we can take an idea or a process and completely apply a different thinking to it or a different perspective and make it something incredibly different and much more powerful. And so I think some of the things that come to mind, and you can obviously see on the diagram, that a lot of this starts with understanding the human condition, the empathy part. Some of this is driven just by people having these really incredible ideas, as we witnessed today. Some of this is driven by some of the market conditions like competition, where we've got to really think differently to stay competitive. And there's a huge part of this is really driven by science and research. So all those things are really important drivers of innovation, but I would also say there's some other things. And some of those things are things like crisis, and we'll talk more about crisis because I think that's particularly important in healthcare. I think environmental conditions and environmental factors are really important in driving innovation. And then thinking about generational, so different evolving and emerging demographic expectations, thinking about changes in the market and advancements, and then thinking about cumulative innovation. So things that were these great ideas, but as you saw from that previous picture, we've just continued to innovate and iterate to make them even stronger and more powerful for our current day need. So let's talk about a couple of some of the things that have been more recent examples of pretty powerful innovations. And they really started as what I call the daily dilemma. And I'll start on the far right with Uber. And I know everybody's familiar with Uber. I'm guessing everybody's been in an Uber, but Uber's really interesting because it really came to be when two computer engineers, guys named Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, were at an engineering conference in Paris. And it was a snowy night after the conference ended, and they could not hail a taxi. And so they were having this conversation about, wow, wouldn't it just be amazing if with the touch of a phone, you could get transportation to you immediately? And what would that look like? And so that launched this whole journey of Uber and rideshare. And I'll say, Uber's also a good example of not just stopping there because they've gone on to really iterate and get into other space like Uber Eats. There's Uber Ambulance and supporting medical transport. So there's a lot that's happened from that initial idea of using your phone to get a ride to you wherever you are. And then in the middle there, I think DoorDash is another fun example. And this actually came to be from a group of students who were studying at Stanford, and they were in an engineering and business course that was called the Startup Garage. And they had actually been working on a mobile app for business owners. And when they went out to do some of their voice of the customer exploration, they came across a store owner who sold macaroons, of all things. And in talking to this shop owner at the Macaroon Cafe, they learned that one of the biggest challenges they faced there was the not being able to keep up with the demand for deliveries of the macaroons. And so that got them thinking, and with their iterations and getting some other thought partners involved, that led to DoorDash. And it started out as a very local in Palo Alto, California, a very local Palo Alto delivery service that is now, as you know, gone global. So, you know, it was using this school experience, having this context of being in this space of the startup garage, going out and doing and learning the framework of things like that empathy, going out and understanding what was important to customers, that really changed their initial idea around the mobile app for businesses to something that was really focused on a specific challenge around delivery. And then Rover's one of my favorites because I was a customer of Rover. I had a new puppy during the pandemic and was really struggling to get dog walking services. And so I heard about Rover. I found somebody on Rover. She actually became our full-time dog walker for a year. It was a wonderful experience. But this really came about by a guy named Greg Kotzeman and his partner, Philip Kimmy, who were struggling to find a person to walk their yellow Labrador. And so one of the things that's neat about this story is he actually took this idea to a local, it was called a startup weekend, probably not unlike this pitchathon, but it was in Seattle, Washington. And he took his idea, and while he was there in the audience, his pitch was heard by a computer science student who was really impressed with the idea, decided to join him, and the platform launched. And it continues to connect pet owners with pet sitters and pet walkers. So some great, really practical examples from, you know, our current context. I think when we talk about innovation, one of the things that's, I think, paramount to remember is that one of the tenets that we teach when we talk about innovation steps and innovation process and design thinking and design learning is this idea that failure can be one of the most important and instructive things. So when there are misses or failures, that we learn from them. And I think history tells us, you know, there's a couple of really prominent examples of where companies didn't pay attention to important steps in what we now talk about in terms of the process of innovation thinking. So I'll start with Kodak. And, you know, Kodak obviously was the biggest in the market for film photography. And in the mid-70s, there started to be the emergence of digital photography. And the management at Kodak actually was dismissive of this emerging trend with moving towards digital. And part of their hesitancy was an internal conflict that they saw the digital photography progression as an absolute threat to their film business. So it was sort of like some insular group thinking at Kodak that led them to not really pay attention to the signal. So there was extensive research that happened in the markets in the early 1980s that really clearly was showing that consumers wanted and were asking for moving away from film photography, getting into digital space. And Kodak really underestimated the speed of that transition. And so it was a major struggle for them in not being able to adapt and to change their business model. And so they actually kind of got left behind. As we know, you know, digital photography has taken off. And so they've been outpaced by their competitors in a large way. BlackBerry is another favorite one, I think, in terms of missed signals and maybe slow to adopt, understanding what consumers wanted. But, you know, for those of you who've had a BlackBerry in your past, I had one, I loved it. One of the things that was unique about the BlackBerry was the touch screen, the touch keys on the BlackBerry. And so one of the misses from a kind of strategic marketing and business standpoint that BlackBerry missed was that really this move to a touchscreen technology away from the keyboards were things that were actively being pursued by Apple and Android. And they failed to recognize that consumers really wanted multimedia capabilities in their handheld device. So starting to look at things like cameras and smartphones beyond just, you know, a touch keypad driven telephone device. So this was mammoth for BlackBerry. They couldn't keep up with the rapid advancements in the technology, and they're, you know, pretty much obsolete. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when the pitches were happening, and I think it was Kat Russell who presented on the Camo project from last year, you know, her statement that if you are the smartest person in the room, get in a new room. And I think some of the things that we learned from the examples of Kodak and BlackBerry was, again, being somewhat siloed and insular in their thinking and not being embracing of what their consumers and customers were telling them and what the trends were telling them. And the last one is Blockbuster, which, you know, Blockbuster, it's really unfortunate. They were really kind of hesitant to get on the bandwagon of digital streaming. They actually had an opportunity in 2000 to acquire Netflix, and they turned it down. And so that actually led to their eventual bankruptcy. But I think these themes of dismissing emerging trends, underestimating speeds of transition, not paying attention to the voice of the customer and consumer preferences, and really being slow to adopt sort of the trends that are happening in the markets are really things that each of these companies had some challenges with. But I think there's some incredibly important lessons in each of those examples. And so the good news is that every single one of us is structured and have the ability to be stronger and very effective innovators. And there is a playbook, there is a process, and this is the things that Marian and her team teach. I've been very fortunate for the last 3 years to be part of the Johnson & Johnson Nurse Innovation Fellowship that brings chief nursing officers and one of their key leaders from their teams together. And they get a year of content and experiential learning and sharing. And it's been incredibly powerful. I've learned a ton, but what I've learned most importantly is that everybody can be schooled in this, and there is a process that can help really fuel innovation. Today's Pitchathon is a great example of that. So having these design thinking and thought sessions where people come together, share their ideas, get feedback, it's incredibly powerful. And so let's talk for a minute about design thinking, because I think this is really a foundational tool for innovation. And I think as I've thought back on my career when I've wanted to really move something and had a wicked challenge that really needed to be addressed, and we really needed to have some progression in, one of the things that I think really held us back was not having the right framework. And part of that was, if you look at the steps there on the right, so it starts with this empathizing, and then you move into defining, and then ideating, prototyping, testing. And I would say this is an iterative process. There are times when you have to go back and go to a certain point again and sort of rethink that step in the process. But I think for me, and maybe for others that are on today, there was a quick sort of rush to get to ideate and skip the empathize part and the defining part. And those are incredibly critical, especially to get you to the right solution for the problem or the challenge at hand. And so there are many programs and curriculums, formal, informal, web-based, very accessible ways to get more exposure and more skilled up in thinking about building your acumen in design thinking. And as I mentioned, you know, there's a ton of formal programming. I would say the Philadelphia area is somewhat, they're saturated with rich resources in developing innovation and providing coursework and programming in design thinking. Penn is a trailblazer in this space. There are so many different aspects of innovation that Penn has really been the leader in. And so those of you that are at Penn, really, you're quite fortunate to have that environment in which to have your ideas and have access to expertise. But I wanted to brag a little bit about Jefferson. We also in our Thomas Jefferson University have a program in innovation. One of the leaders of that program is a guy named Rob Pugliese, and he is a pharmacist by background. He has focused his work primarily over the years with medical students, but in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 years, he and I have partnered and we've really gotten much more focused on interprofessional experiences in a particular program that he runs called Jeff Sobs. And it's brought together frontline nurses, medical students to really ideate together. But there's another arm to his work where there is sort of this entrepreneurial track where people can really develop products and get patents and be shepherded in that process. And I know Penn has a similar program. But I just have on the right-hand side of the screen one of these really cool innovations that came out of the Vault, which is this product called Tilt. And I don't know if anybody on the call is an emergency room nurse by training, but that's what my background was. And this idea of most emergency rooms would, back in the day would have 1 or 2 rooms or beds where you could do a proper pelvic exam. And so this device was a very simple innovation where you could turn any bed into a place where you could do a very solid, good visualization pelvic exam. So again, one person, one idea had a challenge and led to this. So this is the potential that we all have, which is super exciting. And another Penn connection here is, one of the very first times that I can recall getting some formal education and thinking about innovation was when I was a younger clinical director at the Hospital University at Penn. I spent 18 years at HUP. And we did some coursework, a group of leaders, interprofessional leaders with Wharton, and we got introduced to this book on innovation tournaments and just some really novel ideas about thinking about the power of structured events and maybe in the work environment, thinking about theme-based events where you can bring together different types of teams to work together collectively on a sort of rapid turnaround event that will lead to different sort of panel of types of solutions, and then having a way that you can intelligently look at them, evaluate them, filter them to get the greatest types of solutions that you really want to test and invest in. So this book is a great resource. I highly recommend it. But it's really the roadmap for thinking about, one other way to advance and think about innovation in sort of a structured way through innovation tournaments. And of course, in the space of nursing, there's so many resources, and I have to credit Marion has introduced me to a number of these. And I think it was 2 years ago in 2023, I actually participated in the Nurse Hack for Health. They have been, over the last couple of years, holding these at the start of the American Organization of Nurse Leaders Conference. And it's a day-long event, but I learned so much, and I got to meet so many incredible leaders from across the country, and just superb faculty. And again, Marion's been part of that team who has taught that. But I highly recommend that. I mentioned earlier the Nurse Innovation Fellowship that really has been led by Penn Nursing and generously supported by Johnson & Johnson. And just 3 years of the experience of bringing together these remarkable nurse leaders from across the country has just been an incredible experience. And I wanted to just mention at the bottom right there, there's a wonderful TEDx talk by a nurse named Rebecca Love, and she's a very close colleague of Marion's, but she's done a lot of work to really think about innovation, entrepreneurship for nurses. And it's a really great 15-minute talk just on some of her perspectives on how you drive healthcare innovation. I highly recommend that. And I couldn't be in front of, a group of nurses in academia, nurses in practice, nurse leaders, and not share some of the examples from our own profession of nurse-led innovation. And I hope, again, that it sparks ideas. I hope that it sparks some inspiration for you to think about, rethink your own work environment, your own context, and what are the things that we can think about doing differently. again, this is somewhat of a humorous historic slide, but I couldn't help but put this in here because, back to what are the reasons why we as professionals and we as nurses think about, the need to innovate. And some of this is based on some practical things, space. It's based on patient safety. It's based on environmental stewardship. It's based on patient comfort, all those things. But some of these things were staples. Again, they were innovations in their time, but the mercury-based thermometer and some of the threats we now know with the dangers of mercury, a early stage left bottom dialysis machine, the glass IV bottle, like all these things that from an environmental, from a storage, from a portability, from whole number of things were things that really benefited from evolving, iterating, and going to new generations of those concepts. And I mentioned this earlier, but I can't say it enough. I think one of the things in healthcare that we've been, we're fortunate. We're never at a place where we have a shortage of crises. They happen daily. But I think these monumental crises have been a strong impetus for innovation in healthcare. And there are numerous. And I would say, obviously, the most obvious recent one is the pandemic. And just thinking back on the rapid ideation and the incredible innovation on a dime in the moment that happened to help us care for patients and care for each other is something that I think we need to do more meaningful reflection about how we were able to do that. How did we remove the barriers, the bureaucratic things that get in the way, and really, come up with the ways that we can have these creative spaces for people to really think about their environments in new ways and continue to innovate. We still need innovation. So again, I invite people just to think about, and if you feel moved to put in the chat, what are some of the things that you're seeing in the workforce today that really need to be the focus of innovation? I have a long list that I'm going to pop up here in a minute, and I will tell you that thematically, as I've worked with Marion and the team from the Nurse Innovation Fellowship, we are all trying to solve the same problems across the country in healthcare and in nursing. And so the more we can come together and do this, so we're not doing duplicative parallel work, boy, if we can tap into that in a new way, how incredibly powerful that'll be for us, but for patients and families as well. But here's just a snapshot of some of the things. I know, at Jefferson, one of my top worries is the inexperience in the workforce. So we've got 14,000 nurses across our 32 hospitals, and 55% of them have less than 5 years experience. And there's a big chunk of them that are 2 to 3 years experience or less. We obviously know we need to prepare more nurses, and we need to do it more quickly than we traditionally have done it. We also know there's other team members that wrap around with the nurse in delivering care that we have significant shortages of. We've struggled with how do we balance care assignments on the acute inpatient side. We, continue to be burdened by behavioral health and mental health challenges, documentation burden, a significant and at new levels of concerns about nurse well-being and burnout, and just the general workload of a nurse in any setting across the care continuum. So we need innovative solutions, and I'm so inspired and impressed by the teams I heard today, and I'm so reassured that we've got such talent that are thinking about these things. So let me just share a couple of examples from more recent times about nurses innovating. On the far left, this nurse, Sharon Ragone, was a neonatal intensive care unit nurse. And when the treatment for bilirubinemia first came out, where they were using ultraviolet lights, one of the challenges was keeping eye protection on these small babies while they were getting treated. And often they couldn't keep them on. It would delay the amount of treatment. It was stressful for staff. It was stressful for the families. And so she came up with this. It's called the Billy Bonnet. And it's a device that would be put on the infant's head and had a eye covering component to it. so that the baby could get the treatment safely and it was less chaotic in terms of the eye coverings falling off. And so just this simple thing where she had saw this challenge, this dilemma, and started to ideate around it. And this took her in a whole new direction in her career. And she actually started her own company called Small Beginnings. And there's other products that have come out of that. In the middle there, I think many of you might know the story of Anita Dorr. She was an emergency room nurse. And back in the late 60s, she is sort of credited with putting together the first code card. So seeing that when there was a clinical emergency, having to piece together different pieces of equipment and get it to a patient was very disruptive. And so this was sort of her first version of that. And I'll mention that in the references I have for today, Marion Leary and Terry Richmond actually did an article in AJN, I think it was in 2020, that talks about the experience of Anita and her innovation here with the crash cart. And then finally on the far right is a nurse named Cecilia Oth, and she was working with parents and hearing from them the dilemma of kids that had feeding tubes and just the clothing to help them be able to take care of the tubes, check the sites, do all those things. And so she created a onesie, it's called the Tubesie, where it has a flap that opens so you can access that tube site pretty easily. So again, these are simple ideas. These are everyday nurses like all of us who saw a challenge, had some creative thinking, had some partnership, and they led to, incredible innovations. So just going to share a couple more as we kind of get to the last portion here. I love this example because it started with a nurse, and her name was Anne Duran, who was with her husband doing missionary work in French West Africa back in the late 60s. And one of the things she was struck by was the differences in how women, with many times having multiple children, would come for care to their clinic, and they would bring the kids with them. And she remarked on how it was notable that the mothers would always go in the room where their kids were being treated, and they would bring their other kids, and put down a mat and have them sit on the floor. And when they gave birth, their families would often come and be in the room. So sort of doing rooming in before probably it had a name. But one of the things that really struck her was how, as newborns, they would carry their newborns around on their body in, what has become the Snuggly. And so 2 years after she got home from this mission, she created in her own living room, I think with her mother-in-law, what we knew as the sort of the first version of Snuggly that you can see there on the right. And it was funny because the first iterations of this were made out of green corduroy, which was fabric I guess she had readily available. But this is an iteration of this exists today that is used extensively. But again, just seeing and observing in a different culture something that she hadn't been used to, and then capitalizing on that. And then here's another great example, pediatric nurses that were really struggling to quantify the level of pain that children had, and being able to make sure they were matching the pain treatment and interventions to their level of pain. And so they put together and implemented this Wong-Baker pain scale back in the early 80s that uses faces, something that a kid can relate to and point to. So really just a transformational change to really help get more targeted pain management to children. And then, I know we have a lot of educators on today, and, there's just been massive innovation in nursing education, which is so great to see, but so much tech-enabled learning, starting with simulation and the way that simulation has advanced. We've got high fidelity simulations. It really allows, students to be able to practice procedures, make mistakes, and do it in a really sort of realistic but safe, controlled environment. There's a whole lot that's been done with virtual learning, again, giving much more enhanced learning experiences, much more realistic, AI-driven assessment and feedback, like I think we're just tipping the iceberg there about where that's going to take us. But what's really been cool about what I've heard in some of my sessions today is the partnership that faculty have had with engineers, with informaticists, with architects, like just thinking about who we're bringing together to help us think about improving education and care. So really exciting times. And so I want to end, because I know we're going to be soon getting to the big reveal, but just a couple of thoughts on cultivating an innovation mindset. And I want to start with, again, another Penn connection, and Penn's own Adam Grant, who I had the chance to hear last week at AONL, and he was just an amazing keynote. But one of the things he said to us was that when we think about innovation and some of the characteristics, what is it that original thinkers possess? And his answer, as he says, is deceptively simple. Innovation begins with curiosity. And so this idea of going deeper and digging deeper into problems and using approaches like the 5 whys that keep asking why, and understanding problems at a new level that can really help you get to different solutions. And I think the other thing that he said that was really profound to me was thinking starts where information ends. And that means that innovation doesn't happen when we have all the answers. So when we're in the in-between space and when we feel like we're in a quandary, that's where the magic happens. And so I think that's something that I really connected to. And also other things about he really espouses, like the idea of collaboration and collaborating with those that are the unlikely collaborators. So you'll get a completely different viewpoint. And finally, I think you can't say enough about purpose-driven innovation. And I felt that in some of the presentations today, how much I felt the heart and soul of people who were working on the different innovation projects. And, so just a few more things just about cultivating an innovative mindset. And there's, a whole set of things in terms of tools and your own reflection framework to help you think about, how do you be more intentional about this? And some of it's very simplistic. Seek new experiences. And that can be as easy as like change your route of travel. Look at your unit through a different lens. Nothing more powerful than being a patient yourself and understanding, like, what does that feel like when you're laying in the bed? But practice creative problem solving and thinking about, how you can do experimentation and bring together different communities of practice to help you think about and hear your ideas and give you feedback. Building that supportive network goes along with that. And I, again, want to just, say the importance of learning from failure, seeing them as an opportunity for learning and not as a bad thing. They can actually be incredibly important, incredibly instructive. And just one more, I want to brag a little bit more about one of our experiences at Jefferson. And this is in our Lehigh Valley Health Network. Our chief nurse there, Anne-Marie Chavarria, has implemented this idea of innovation units. So putting into the practice environment an everyday focus on how we innovate and getting the whole entire unit involved in how they think about it. And you can see on the right, sort of the very simplistic way they gather ideas, how they prioritize them, using professional governance to help them say, which ones are we really going to focus on? And then how they get them into practice, and then how they share them across the entire organization and across innovation units. So I love her thinking, how she frames this is, it starts with the pebbles in nurses' shoes. So what are the things that are the pain points? What are the things that drive us crazy? And then give people the framework, the time, the space, and the tools to really drive innovation in everyday practice. And so as I finish up, I will just say that we're at a great time of innovation. There are so many things in our daily lives today that just even a few years ago didn't seem possible, and here they are. And I would just remind each of you that you have incredible potential to have the next big idea. And you should be intentional, and I encourage you and challenge you to take a little time and space to really develop and continue to nurture your inner innovator. And I'll end on this one and just say thank you again sincerely to George, to Marion, to Dean Villaruel, to the entire Penn School of Nursing for inviting me to be part of this. It's been so inspiring. And I would just say, take risk, be courageous, and sail into uncharted waters. You never know what can happen. So with that, I will end there, and excited to hear how the deliberations went.
Thank you so much for this great presentation. We are running out of time, so we have only time for maybe 1 to 2 questions at the most. And so if folks have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. And while they're doing so, maybe I'll start and ask you a question about the excitement with AI and all the other technological advancements that we see. How do you see how can we balance that with the need to ensure that nursing innovations remain patient-centered and equitable?
It's an excellent question, George. And the way my initial instinct on that question goes right to the philosophical underpinnings of patient and family-centered care, which is if it's about me, it shouldn't be without me. So I think we've got to invite patient and family advisors to the table and help us think about that. It's a really exciting time, but it's a cautionary time too, because to your point, we don't want to do something that's unintended in terms of what this means for patient experience or for patient outcomes. But we've got robust patient advisory councils across Jefferson, and they are not shy, and they take their roles very seriously. And we're trying to be much more courageous about the tables we put them at. But I think when it comes to AI, that's a great example of where I would engage them from the outset.
Great, thank you so much. Let me check to see if there are any other questions. I know Marion is going to come and join us. Oh, there she is. So I guess we're going to wrap up this segment. Thank you again, Kate, so much. And I'll turn it over to Marion.
All right, thank you, Kate. I caught the last couple minutes of your presentation, always inspired by you. So thank you for doing this. I can't wait to watch the whole thing.
Awesome. I'm going to go backstage.
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, I hope you all enjoyed Dr. Kate Fitzpatrick's talk. I have no doubt she dropped a lot of knowledge and wisdom on you. I personally can't wait to watch the recording of her presentation. So now I'm going to use the live sketches from Rachel Acker from Health Hero to just recap our presentations for today. And then we will announce the winners. So as a reminder, we had a presentation from David Yu for the inclusion idea box as part of one of our Ready to Practice track presentations. We had Enhance Kit from Heather Gregg and Dina Bammer, another Ready to Practice track presentation. And then in our general track, we had the Larvae Infestation Flex Treatment Lift Innovation from a team of Gabby, Jordan, and Taylor. And then our final presentation was a tele-wound care consultation for people who use drugs from Dr. Eleanor Torrey and Dr. Shoshana Aronowitz and team member Dr. Tricia Apri. So these are the 4 pitches that you all heard today. And now I'm going to invite up Courtney Hatzma from Penn Health Tech, who will announce the winners.
Yeah, thank you. So first up, I want to echo Marion and thank all the teams for your hard work and thoughtful presentations today. It was really inspiring to hear how you guys are trying to tackle these important problems with your innovative solutions. On behalf of the judging panel, I'm excited to share that all teams will be advancing and will be awarded funding to continue developing their ideas. We are really impressed by the potential impact of each of your projects and are really looking forward to seeing how your work evolves in the coming months. Congratulations.
Thank you, Courtney. So just to reiterate, all 4 teams are going to move forward to the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator program. They will be provided funding, mentorship, and education from Penn Health Tech and others to help create, implement, and move forward their innovative ideas. To our winners, thank you so much. The hard work is just beginning. I will be in touch after the event to get you started in the Accelerator program. Before we close, I have a lot of folks that I'd like to thank. As Kat said earlier, teamwork makes the dream work. So I'd like to thank everyone who participated in today's event and made it possible, including Dean Tony, Dr. George Demiris, Dr. Kate Fitzpatrick, Jen Garcia, Anthony Ogue, Dr. Neetu Singh from the Penn Center for Innovation, our Innovation Advisory Board members, some of whom helped with the pitch practice sessions, my colleagues at Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine, and of course, all of our speakers and judges. It definitely takes a village. I'd also like to once again thank our sponsors, the Bedford Falls Foundation, for their lead support of the Penn Nursing Innovation Accelerator program, as well as Carolyn and Thomas Bennett and Andrea Laporte, and Penn Health Tech for providing the education for our winners this year. Finally, thank you to the finalists and participants for sharing their innovations with us today. I hope they inspire more nurses to begin taking the brave step to create solutions to problems they're seeing in their own practice. Please go out and innovate. We are here to help. Hope everyone has a good night. Thank you very much.